So next up, we have a presentation from Claire Macland, who's the SVP of Marketing from EQUINIX. She's going to be talking about how interconnection strategies deliver competitive advantage.
Thank you.
Martin, are you free?
So I'm very aware that there's noise coming in the back. This is just going to be 10 minutes on interconnection. So I'm going to work very hard to keep the energy level high with just a handheld mic. So just a couple of points of view on interconnection and what it means in the marketplace today. I'm not going to be talking to you about EQUINIX, so a big sigh of relief from you in the room. But I did want to give you a point of view on some of the things that we study and some of the observations that we make about interconnection and the way that organizations are using it to specifically create competitive advantage for themselves. So the clock is ticking, so let's go. Something that we spend a lot of time looking at are the major macro trends that are facing our customers day in, day out. And when we look at these individual trends are not going to be surprises for you. But what is interesting is the fact that organizations today very often use interconnection as a way specifically to address these trends. And that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking to organizations about and understanding how they are using interconnection to address each of these. When we talk to our enterprise organizations, we start to find a very common pattern about how they are using IT in order to be able to address those broader trends. And we see that organizations tend to actually use very similar, what we call IT transformational steps. And what's also interesting is that you can see that organizations tend to use those steps in a linear way. So starting from optimizing their networks, starting to introduce hybrid multi-cloud, starting to tackle the need to distribute security right out to the edge across all of their devices, tackling the huge requirements on distributed data, and then by the time they've done all of that, tends to be the fifth thing that they tackle, which is how they can start to provide a dynamic and agile application exchange in a sort of digital ecosystem with other like-minded organizations. So we look at these transformational steps, and we've provided blueprints and transformational step guides to organizations who are trying to do exactly this. So if we look at where we see interconnection moving, and one of the things that we do, because so much of EQUINIX's business comes from interconnection, we spend a lot of time forecasting the demand that's going to come from the interconnection space. So if we just look at that top headline, by 2022, provisioned interconnection bandwidth, which we think is the most relevant measure of interconnection, will be more than double the peak of global internet traffic and over 13 times the volume. And if we just start to sort of think about that and think about what that means for the industry, for the people outside at this conference, those are huge numbers. If we just look at the little graph in the middle, interconnection in terms of provisioned bandwidth is growing at a rate of 51%, which is massively outpacing the growth of the internet and massively outpacing the growth or decline of MPLS. And if we put that into context in terms of the size of interconnection that we're seeing by 2022, over on the left, 13,300 terabits per second, or the equivalent of 53 zettabytes annually. And just for giggles, some data on the right-hand side that puts that 53 zettabytes per year into perspective. So, conscious it's half-term at the moment in the UK, 13.3 billion video gaming streams that could be achieved in 1 minute concurrently, more than enough to keep our children entertained. Or if we think about our world of work, 10 billion emails with attachments per minute. Enough to absolutely ruin every day at work for the rest of our lives. So those types of forecasts are things that we measure and things that we are then drilling into to see, well, where is that demand coming from? Are all verticals reacting in the same way? And of course, that is never the case. I thought we could just look at, here are some of the key verticals that make up the demand for interconnection. And if we just talk about the top three, so the first one is the telecommunications industry. No surprise at a conference like this. But what's interesting is that it's actually telecommunications is driving 20% of the demand for provisioned interconnection bandwidth, and is growing at 40% approximately year on year. Cloud and IT, as organizations are trying to help organizations move into hybrid multi-cloud and extend their reach, cloud and IT is growing at over 40% year on year and accounting for 16%. But banking and insurance, when we move into the enterprise verticals, growing at 66% year on year, as banks and insurance sit in the middle of that whole perfect storm of fintech and cybersecurity and provisioning of digital ecosystems. Just those three, the growth that are coming out of those is staggering. But what I thought was also interesting are the also-rans, the sub-verticals that sit on that chart, whose growth is actually bigger than each of the top three. So you've got 67% growth, 77% growth, 68% growth, 71% growth, amazing numbers, and a marketplace that just shows the drive around interconnection of how people are trying to provision and provide a different type of service and structure within their organizations. So moving on to structure, when we talk to the enterprises that we work with every day, we can see the type of organizational impact that interconnection has provided. So on the left-hand side, the very simple picture of before interconnection, with a massively constrained point-to-point architecture, and a lot of conversations that many of us in the room would have had with organizations about what is not right in the picture on the left and how can we shift this. And it's the shift to the picture on the right that we hear organizations talking about more and more in our day-to-day business. So a heavily optimized multi-point structure of organization, an architecture provided through direct private traffic exchange. And it's that type of structure that we now see where organizations have moved massively into a hybrid multi-cloud solution, but also where they are starting aggressively to architect for the edge. One of the things that we are, the only plug that I will give for EQUINIX, one of the things that we are happy to talk to people about, would love to talk to people about, is some of the technologies that we provide today that would allow organizations to move on this hybrid multi-cloud journey. And using the EQUINIX Cloud Exchange Fabric technology, we are able to do this in global scale in order to allow people to move straight to the edge. And it's at the edge where we are talking to organizations today where they are looking to take advantage of SD-WAN technology, as per the previous panel discussion, but also VNF technology and how organizations are looking to provision and stand up alternative types of hardware solutions for their organizations. And any carriers who are interested in coming to talk to us about those types of solutions, we're just out in the exhibition area. We would love to talk to you about some of those new and emerging areas that we see enterprises being so keen to talk to us about. So, one of the things that we do every year at EQUINIX, because we are so focused on interconnection and we are measuring so much of interconnection and the trend and the forecasting of demand, we provide something called the Global Interconnection Index, Exhibit A. We have these on our stand. We're quite happy to give them out to whoever wants to come along and ask for one. You can also download one for free from our website. And what it is, it's about 40 pages talking about qualitative and quantitative coverage of the interconnection space and where we see it developing across the globe, how we see it developing in different speeds, as you just saw, in different verticals, in different metros, in different countries. We give that type of detail for free. We are more than happy to have anybody come along and stop to chat to us about the amazing world of interconnection and the difference that it's making to organizations. Because the organizations that are investing in interconnection today are doing so because of the difference that they can see that it makes to their customers, to the organizations they're interconnecting with at the edge, their partners, or even just their internal employees. And that's the difference that it makes, and that's why we talk about interconnection as being the real weapon for competitive advantage. So that was my 10-minute pitch with minimal positioning of EQUINIX. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.